Okay, so age-old question. Do you just buy the hardcover, the paperback? Do you buy both? What do you do? I think it really depends. It depends on what's available, depends on your available funds, what the price point of these various things are. I think ideally it's great to have both. I think in certain cases it's probably unavoidable. If you've bought these books and have been collecting these for a while, I think it's particularly unavoidable. Take the case of Darth Maul Shadowhunter. So when this came out, well, I picked it up in hardcover. When the paperback came out, I wasn't necessarily planning on getting it because I don't need a completely redundant paperback and hardcover version. But in this case, there was a James Luceno short story related to Maul included. Well, in that case, I'm going to pick it up. Yes, sort of absurd that I have two versions of the same book, but because of those extra few pages at the end, it's all worthwhile. Well, imagine my total shock when 10 years later they did something fairly unique in the EU world and republished the paperback version with yet another additional James Luceno Darth Maul story. You got to pick it up, right? So I'm in the position now of having essentially three versions of the same story on the shelf. It's just that in these cases, there's some additional short stories that are totally worthwhile. Now, if you don't have any of these three, you can just, for instance, pick up the 2012 version, which is going to give you both the Luceno stories and the Michael Reeves mainline Shadowhunter book. But I still think that even if you didn't go chronologically, I think there are still some fun reasons that you're going to want to have both paperback and hardcovers. I mean, just to take the case of the Darth Maul Shadowhunter book here, well, on the one hand, cover art's the same from the hardcover to the original paperback. But if you're a Star Wars art fan, and I mean Star Wars produces some great cover art, well, the second version's a little different. That's a fun thing to have up on the shelf to take a look at from time to time. In addition, there's much subtler things that that a hardcover gives you that a paperback doesn't, and vice versa. So in the case of hardcovers in the EU, and almost every case, there are these fun little short blurbs on the back. Now, unlike the paperbacks, which are full with blurbs and marketing information and everything else, these were always really fun, really intriguing, either questions or setups or various things like that about what the heck is inside the book, and really helped kind of situate it in the greater context of the EU canon continuity. So to that extent alone, they were really helpful. There's a way in which you could take every EU hardcover, turn on its back, and just read through those, and just like build a really kind of fun, intriguing sense about what this 37,000 year saga is all about. I mean, take a look at Old Republic Fatal Alliance. Let's flip it over here. I mean, pretty stark background, pretty awesome, lava landscape here. And it just says something like, everything I've seen confirms my worst fears. Now, that's pretty vague, doesn't tell you much about the story, but it certainly excites you to want to figure out what the heck that could be referring to, right? And that's something that really the paperback version wasn't able to do on the back. Now, the paperback version, not unlike the Shadowhunters, is going to tell you something else. It's going to give you a different sense about what's inside. But I think to the extent that they both help shape your imagination about what you're about to read and how it does fit into the larger EU saga, I think it's totally worth gaining that extra experience. So if it really is the case, it's only a couple of extra bucks to pick up the hardcover, the paperback, or vice versa. I think it might be worth doing so just for that reason alone. There are other reasons too. There are other reasons to pick up. I mean, like I said, there's the ways in which the hardcovers give you different information and stuff. But again, to go back to the cover art thing, I mean, I'm just so keen, particularly like on Bantam era cover art. So the first time I ever saw the Bounty Hunter Wars in a store, it was actually the Science Fiction Book Club omnibus of all three. I was really taken by this. I thought it was fantastic, and I knew that the other three existed, but I thought, wow, the price was so reasonable. I think it was like $6 at the time. Now, this is way back in the day. $6 was more like, I don't know, 15 bucks today, but hey, still a really great price, and that way I saved space on the shelf and I didn't have to buy the other three. But years later, I started to think to myself, as cool as this cover is with Vader and Boba Fett and everyone else on here and good old Dengar down here at the bottom, I thought, well, sure, I could get this and I could have the same cover art. This is the first volume. But I was like, but do I really need that? And I said, well, you know what though? But it's got some things here that, for instance, this doesn't. And I said, well, I kind of like to read about that. And I like to sort of know either what the author or Lucasfilm, whoever wrote this, kind of had to say and how they wanted me to think about this. And I thought, well, if I get that too, I mean, let's get the others in the set, because there's just some awesome artwork here, right? I mean, we got Shizor Shadows of the Empire. We've got more of the bounty hunters here. I mean, the Emperor. I mean, this stuff is just iconic. I mean, I wish these were posters that you could pick up, you know. So, and again, you get more stuff, you get more blurbs in the back, and so yes, is it a little absurd now that on the shelf I've got, duplicates? I've got the Bounty Hunter Wars, and then I've got the Bounty Hunter Wars. It kind of is, but again, to the extent that I'm a kind of a completionist and kind of an obsessive collector, it's fun to have it in all versions. But more than just being fun and more than just having sort of a big Star Wars collection, it really does in very subtle ways. After you've been through the stories a few times and you've absorbed those in all the ways that you've read them, you've reread them, you've cross-referenced them against other books in the EU, you've checked them out on Wikipedia, you've tried to figure everything else you can about them. I feel like some of this additional sort of information is going to be one extra way in which to sort of get just that much more out of the books. So those are just a few reasons I think to pick up, where available, when funds are accessible, both hardcovers and paperbacks. And I'll talk a lot more about hardcover paperback decisions down the road. But in the meantime, curious what you guys do. Do you prefer both? Do you prefer one or the other? Ultimately, I just think it's like anything in the Star Wars world that, hey, it's ultimately up to your opinion and it's all good. I've seen collections with nothing but hardcover and collections with nothing but paperback, and they all look really fantastic. So I think, hey, if it's Star Wars EU, you can't go wrong. All right, that's it for today. I'll talk to you later.